Good morning, sweet ladies. Thank you for joining us in Far Above Rubies today. I'm so very glad that each of you are here. We are getting ready to wrap up our walk through the books of Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, and Jonah by walking through the book of Jonah for the last few days of this month. Today we are focusing on Jonah chapter 1, and we will be talking about the opposite direction. Verse 3 says this, "But Jonah got up and went in the opposite direction to get away from the Lord." Now, many of you will know and be familiar with the story of Jonah. You know that the Lord told Jonah to go to Nineveh and deliver a message. We know that Jonah refused. He ran away. He got swallowed up by a whale. This is pretty much the extent that we know from Sunday school lessons about Jonah's story, that he eventually gives up and he goes to Nineveh. But we're going to take a closer look at Jonah's story, at his running away from God in this passage. The Lord tells Jonah, "I have a message for you to give the people of Nineveh." And this is so important that God's not looking for whosoever will. He says, "No, Jonah, you're the man for the job. You're the one. I want you. You're the one they're going to listen to." I don't know why this is, but God handpicked Jonah for this mission. And Jonah didn't just run away from Nineveh. Jonah didn't just run away from his mission or his calling. It says that he got up and went in the opposite direction to get away from the Lord. Now, if you know anything about God, you know God is everywhere. The psalmist David said, "If I go into the uttermost parts of the sea, even there will your hand lead me and your right hand will guide me." There's nowhere that we can go to get away from God. But Jonah tried pretty hard. Jonah tried pretty hard. A lot of us today say, "Oh Lord, I want to hear from you. God, if you'll just open your mouth and speak a word into my life." And yet the problem is that hearing from God speaking to us, is not usually the issue. There are seasons in life where God remains silent. There are storms and trials that God will hold his peace and let you go through and grow through situations before he pipes back up again. But most of the time, God is very willing to speak into our hearts, whether through his word or through a still small voice in prayer, through a strong impression on your heart or your mind, or that nagging voice in your head that won't let you get away from something. There are many ways that the Lord speaks to us today. And I will bet if you sat there and thought about it for a moment, you could think of a time very recently when the Lord spoke to you. The problem is not usually God being willing to speak to us. It's usually, our problem is usually us not being willing to listen. Us being unwilling to actually heed and obey and follow the instruction that the Lord has for us. Whether it's a small act of kindness that puts hands and feet on the gospel of Christ, paying for someone's meal, or going out of your way to tell someone that God loves them, or to clean up a neighbor's yard, or babysit a neighbor's child or a loved one's child so that they can have some time out. Whatever it is, a small act of kindness can absolutely be something the Lord speaks to you about. That's probably the one that you could think of most recently, God speaking something to your heart about. Other times it could be huge life change. It could be God saying, "Hey, you know what? I'm calling you to go there." Wherever X lands on the map between you and God. It could be God saying it's time to uproot your life and go. It's time to take a leap of faith. It's time to trust me. It could be God saying it's time for a career change because there's somebody at that job who needs to hear my word and my name and that I love them. It could be that God is leading you to a different church where you might be more valuable to that church. They've been praying at that church for help, and you could be one that fits that position to a T. It could be any number of things. It could be God speaking to you about a potential mate for your life. It could be God talking to you about potentially having children. Whatever it is, big, huge life change also comes with God talking to us about it if we're seeking him on a regular basis. The trouble is that we will often, whether it's a small act of kindness or something little that the Lord speaks to us about, or it is a huge life change moment, we will often get up and go in the opposite direction. We will often make ourselves unavailable to God and say, no, God, I can't do that. You see, I have this other engagement. God, I'm too busy. My schedule doesn't allow. I don't have enough money. It's not the right time, God. It's not the right season. Lord, I'll just have to wait until. And we go in the opposite direction. God says, go here. And we go, but I think I'll just wait over there. We may not pick ourselves up and go put ourselves on a ship running away from God. He may not send a physical storm in the middle of the ocean that tosses a boat to and fro and gets us thrown overboard to be eaten by a whale. That may not be our dramatic story, but there might just be something in your life that God is trying to talk to you about, that God is saying, will you please just listen? You're praying, God speak, God's speaking, and he's saying, just listen. Just listen, just obey, just bow your heart, just say, God, whatever you desire of me. And I want to encourage you that if you've been praying those kinds of prayers, God, speak to me. God, show me. If you've been saying, God, use me. If you've been saying, God, whatever you want from me, I surrender to you. You better be willing to listen when he speaks, or you might just find yourself in a boat in the middle of the sea, tossed to and fro. You might just find yourself tossed overboard in life and getting swallowed up by circumstances beyond your control. Okay? That's not to be scary or doomsday speaking. That's to say, don't get up and run in the opposite direction of what God has for you, of what he is speaking to you. What God's plans are far greater than the plans we can have for ourselves, whether it's through a small act of kindness that will brighten our own day, that will encourage us, that will strengthen our faith, that will enable us to trust God even more when we obey it, or it's huge life change and you just need to take that leap and trust that he is there to catch you. Whatever it is, I encourage you to open your heart, to open your ears, and to listen to what the word of the Lord would say to you. Don't go in the opposite direction. Don't make yourself unavailable to God, okay? You cannot get away from him. You cannot get away from his instruction. You cannot get away from his calling. It will be this nagging thing in the pit of your stomach until you obey. Until you obey. Better to just obey than to run in the opposite direction. Go and read Jonah chapter 1. Make sure you tune in the next couple of days for the conclusion of Jonah's story. It has a great ending, okay? Go and read that chapter. Stay tuned with us for the next couple of days. And if no one has told you lately, you are loved and you are cherished and you are valuable. You have beautiful and tremendous worth, my friend, and that worth is far above rubies. Thank you for being here with me today, and I'll see you all again tomorrow. God bless you.